Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a Keurig Dr. Pepper employee, while reviewing internal financial projections for an upcoming product launch, discovers a significant discrepancy that, if publicly known, could materially impact the company's stock price. The employee has a personal stock purchase plan scheduled to execute in 2 weeks. What is the most appropriate course of action for the employee? Option A. Conduct independent online research to gather more information about similar discrepancies in other companies before deciding on a course of action. Option B. Discuss the discrepancy with a close friend who also works in a different department at Keurig Dr. Pepper to get their opinion on its potential impact. Option C. Proceed with the personal stock purchase plan as scheduled, assuming the discrepancy is an error and will be corrected before the stock price is affected. Option D. Immediately report the discovered discrepancy to Keurig Dr. Pepper's compliance department or legal counsel, and refrain from any personal trading activity related to Keurig Dr. Pepper stock until the matter is resolved. Correct answer is D. Immediately report the discovered discrepancy to Keurig Dr. Pepper's compliance department or legal counsel, and refrain from any personal trading activity related to Keurig Dr. Pepper stock until the matter is resolved. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Keurig Dr. Pepper, as a publicly traded company, operates within a highly regulated environment. Employees are entrusted with sensitive information and have a responsibility to act ethically and in compliance with all applicable laws and company policies. Misinterpreting or disregarding these obligations can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and internal disciplinary action. The core challenge lies in discerning the appropriate course of action when faced with potentially non-public information that could impact the company's financial standing. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the observed information through the designated internal channels, such as the compliance department or legal counsel. This aligns with the principles of corporate governance and insider trading regulations, which mandate that individuals possessing material non-public information, MNPI, must not trade on it or disclose it to others who might. By reporting, the employee initiates a formal review process, allowing Keurig Dr. Pepper's compliance team to assess the information's materiality and determine the appropriate disclosure or trading restrictions. This upholds the company's commitment to fair and transparent markets and protects both the employee and the organization from legal liabilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to ignore the information and continue with personal trading plans. This is a direct violation of insider trading laws and company policy. It presumes the information is not material or that personal judgment is sufficient, which is a dangerous assumption in a regulated environment. The failure here is a lack of adherence to the fundamental principle of not trading on MNPI. Another incorrect approach is to discuss the information with a trusted colleague outside of the official reporting structure. This constitutes an illegal disclosure of MNPI, potentially leading to tipping violations. Even with good intentions, sharing such information can create a chain of illegal trading and expose both the original employee and the colleague to severe penalties. The failure is in breaching confidentiality and facilitating potential insider trading. A third incorrect approach is to conduct independent research to verify the information before reporting. While diligence is valued, attempting to independently confirm MNPI outside of official channels can inadvertently lead to further dissemination or misinterpretation. The proper procedure is to report first, allowing the company's designated experts to handle verification and assessment. The failure lies in bypassing established protocols and potentially compounding the risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals in regulated industries like Keurig Dr. Pepper must adopt a proactive and cautious approach to information handling. When encountering information that could be construed as material and non-public, the default action should always be to report it through established internal compliance mechanisms. This demonstrates integrity, adherence to regulatory frameworks, and a commitment to protecting the company and its stakeholders. A robust decision-making process involves 1. Recognizing potential MNPI. 2. Understanding the obligation not to trade or disclose. 3. Immediately reporting through designated channels. 4. Cooperating fully with internal investigations. This systematic approach minimizes personal and corporate risk. Question 2. Upon reviewing a potential vendor for a significant contract with Keurig Dr. Pepper, an employee discovers that the primary contact at the vendor company is their sibling. The employee is involved in the evaluation and selection process for this vendor. What is the most appropriate course of action for the employee to take? Option A. Proceed with the evaluation and selection process, assuming the personal relationship will not influence their professional judgment. Option B. Continue with the evaluation and selection process, but avoid any direct communication with the vendor contact until after the decision is made. Option C. Discreetly inform the vendor contact that they will be involved in the selection process and ask them to ensure the vendor's proposal is competitive. Option D. Immediately disclose the familial relationship to their direct manager and the human resources department, and recuse themselves from any further involvement in the vendor selection process. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the familial relationship to their direct manager and the human resources department, and recuse themselves from any further involvement in the vendor selection process. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an employee at Keurig Dr. Pepper to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure compliance with internal policies and external regulations. The core challenge lies in balancing personal relationships with professional responsibilities and maintaining the integrity of business dealings. Careful judgment is required to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, which can damage the company's reputation and lead to regulatory scrutiny. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent disclosure of the relationship to the appropriate internal stakeholders at Keurig Dr. Pepper, such as HR or a compliance officer. This aligns with best professional practice because it upholds the principles of ethical conduct in corporate governance. Specifically, it adheres to common regulatory frameworks that mandate disclosure of potential conflicts of interest to prevent undue influence, favoritism, or insider trading. By disclosing, the employee allows Keurig Dr. Pepper to assess the situation, implement appropriate safeguards, like recusal from certain decisions, and ensure that all business decisions are made in the best interest of the company, free from personal bias. This transparency is crucial for maintaining trust and compliance. An incorrect approach of remaining silent about the relationship is professionally unacceptable because it violates ethical obligations and potentially company policy regarding conflicts of interest. This failure to disclose can lead to situations where decisions are influenced by personal relationships rather than objective business criteria, creating an unfair advantage or disadvantage for vendors. This can also be seen as a breach of fiduciary duty to the company. Another incorrect approach of proceeding with the vendor selection process without any disclosure, assuming the relationship will not influence decisions, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the importance of perceived impartiality and the potential for unconscious bias. Even if no actual impropriety occurs, the appearance of a conflict can be as damaging as actual misconduct and can lead to investigations and reputational harm. A further incorrect approach of attempting to conceal the relationship while still participating in the vendor selection process is a serious ethical and regulatory failure. This constitutes dishonesty and a deliberate attempt to circumvent established compliance procedures. Such actions undermine the integrity of the procurement process and can have severe consequences, including disciplinary action, termination, and potential legal repercussions for both the employee and the company. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of Keurig Dr. Pepper's Code of Conduct and conflict of interest policies. When a potential conflict arises, the professional should err on the side of caution and disclose the situation promptly. This involves identifying the nature of the relationship, assessing its potential impact on business decisions, and communicating this information to the designated authority within the company. The goal is to ensure that all actions are transparent, ethical, and in full compliance with regulatory requirements and company standards. Question 3. The risk matrix shows a potential discrepancy in the labeling of a new beverage product manufactured by Keurig Dr. Pepper that may not fully align with current FDA guidelines for nutritional information disclosure. Which of the following actions should a Keurig Dr. Pepper employee take? Option A. Immediately halt production and distribution of the product until the labeling is reviewed and corrected by the compliance department. Option B. Continue with the current labeling, as the risk matrix is a preliminary tool and does not represent a confirmed violation. Option C. Proceed with the product launch as planned, assuming the discrepancy is minor and unlikely to attract regulatory attention. Option D. Inform the marketing team to adjust the product's promotional materials to emphasize other aspects, thereby diverting attention from the labeling issue. The correct answer is A. Immediately halt production and distribution of the product until the labeling is reviewed and corrected by the compliance department. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Keurig Dr. Pepper employees to navigate potential conflicts between business objectives and regulatory compliance. The risk matrix highlights areas where the company's operations might intersect with legal or ethical boundaries, necessitating a proactive and informed response. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any actions taken align with the company's commitment to regulatory adherence and ethical conduct, avoiding potential legal repercussions, reputational damage. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the identified risks against Keurig Dr. Pepper's established compliance policies and relevant U.S. federal and state regulations. This process ensures that any potential violations are identified and addressed through appropriate channels, such as escalating to the legal or compliance department for guidance and remediation. This aligns with the principles of corporate governance and the legal obligation to operate within the bounds of the law, as mandated by various U.S. regulatory bodies overseeing consumer goods and business practices. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring or downplaying the risks presented in the matrix is professionally unacceptable. This failure to acknowledge and investigate potential compliance issues directly contravenes the company's duty to maintain a compliant operational framework and could lead to violations of regulations such as those enforced by the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, for product labeling, or the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, for advertising practices. Another incorrect approach, such as implementing immediate, unvetted changes based solely on the matrix without consulting relevant internal experts or understanding the full regulatory context, risks creating new compliance issues or misinterpreting the severity and nature of the identified risks. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to engage with the established compliance infrastructure designed to prevent and manage regulatory breaches. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the regulatory landscape, assessing the specific risks identified, consulting internal compliance and legal resources, and implementing corrective actions that are both effective and compliant with all applicable U.S. laws and company policies. This systematic approach ensures that business decisions are made with a clear understanding of their legal and ethical implications. Question 4. Compliance review shows a potential discrepancy in how certain vendor contracts at Keurig Dr. Pepper are being managed, which may not fully align with the company's established procurement policies and could present a compliance risk. Which of the following is the most appropriate next step for the compliance department? Option A. Advise the procurement team to simply ensure all future contracts adhere strictly to the existing policies, assuming the past discrepancies are minor and unlikely to cause significant issues. Option B. Escalate the issue to senior leadership for a decision on whether to invest resources in investigating the discrepancy, given the potential cost of a full review. Option C. Immediately halt all new contract negotiations with vendors until the procurement policies can be thoroughly revised to eliminate any ambiguity. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive review of the affected vendor contracts and procurement processes to identify the exact nature and scope of the discrepancy, assess the associated risks, and develop a targeted remediation plan. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive review of the affected vendor contracts and procurement processes to identify the exact nature and scope of the discrepancy, assess the associated risks, and develop a targeted remediation plan. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient business operations with the imperative to maintain robust compliance and risk management practices. The compliance review at Keurig Dr. Pepper has identified a potential gap, and the decision maker must choose the most appropriate course of action to address it without creating new risks or undermining existing controls. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach is both effective in mitigating the identified risk and compliant with relevant regulations and internal policies. The correct approach involves a proactive and thorough investigation of the identified compliance gap. This entails gathering all relevant information, assessing the potential impact of the gap, and developing a remediation plan. This approach is right because it directly addresses the identified issue in a structured and responsible manner, aligning with the principles of good corporate governance and regulatory compliance. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to identifying and rectifying potential violations, which is a cornerstone of effective risk management and a requirement under many regulatory frameworks that mandate proactive compliance efforts and internal control systems. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost savings without a proper risk assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from prioritizing financial expediency over compliance and risk mitigation, potentially leading to greater financial and reputational damage if the underlying issue escalates. It violates the ethical duty to act in the best interest of the company by neglecting potential legal or regulatory repercussions. Another incorrect approach that involves ignoring the compliance gap due to perceived low likelihood of detection would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This demonstrates a disregard for internal controls and a willingness to operate in a manner that could be non-compliant, even if detection is not immediate. It undermines the integrity of the compliance program and exposes Keurig Dr. Pepper to undue risk. A further incorrect approach that involves implementing a superficial fix without understanding the root cause of the compliance gap would also be professionally unacceptable. This approach fails to address the underlying systemic issues, meaning the gap is likely to reappear or manifest in other ways. It represents a lack of due diligence and a failure to implement effective, sustainable solutions, which is contrary to the principles of robust risk management and continuous improvement in compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying the compliance issue, followed by an analysis of its potential impact and likelihood. Based on this assessment, a range of potential solutions should be considered, evaluating each for its effectiveness in mitigating the risk, its cost, and its compliance implications. The chosen solution should be the one that best balances these factors, with a clear plan for implementation, monitoring, and review. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the company's commitment to compliance and ethical conduct. Question 5. Examination of the data shows that a new marketing campaign for Keurig Dr. Pepper beverage highlights a perceived health benefit that is only marginally supported by preliminary research, with some internal data suggesting potential negative side effects not yet fully understood. The marketing team is eager to launch the campaign to capitalize on current consumer trends. Option A. Proceed with the marketing campaign, but include a prominent disclaimer that the health benefit is based on preliminary research and may not be conclusive. Option B. Delay the marketing campaign until further comprehensive research is conducted to definitively establish the health benefit and thoroughly investigate any potential negative side effects. Option C. Proceed with the marketing campaign, ensuring the language used is carefully worded to avoid making definitive claims about the health benefit and to acknowledge the preliminary nature of the research. Option D. Launch the marketing campaign as planned, focusing solely on the positive aspects of the preliminary research and omitting any mention of potential negative side effects or the limited scope of the data. Correct answer is C. Proceed with the marketing campaign, ensuring the language used is carefully worded to avoid making definitive claims about the health benefit and to acknowledge the preliminary nature of the research. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's desire for positive public relations with the ethical obligation to accurately represent product performance. Misleading consumers, even unintentionally, can erode trust and lead to regulatory scrutiny. Careful judgment is required to ensure that marketing claims are substantiated and do not create unrealistic expectations. The correct approach involves a commitment to transparency and factual accuracy in all marketing communications. This means ensuring that any claims made about Keurig Dr. Pepper products are supported by robust data and do not overstate benefits or downplay limitations. Adhering to advertising standards and consumer protection regulations is paramount. This approach upholds ethical principles of honesty and integrity, fostering long-term customer loyalty and avoiding potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the marketing campaign without verifying the data, thereby risking the dissemination of misleading information. This failure to ensure accuracy violates ethical duties to consumers and could contravene advertising regulations designed to prevent deceptive practices. Another incorrect approach would be to selectively present data that favors the desired narrative while omitting information that contradicts it. This selective disclosure is a form of misrepresentation and undermines the principle of full and fair disclosure. Finally, ignoring the discrepancy and proceeding with the campaign based on a hunch or assumption rather than evidence is professionally irresponsible and ethically unsound, as it prioritizes expediency over accuracy and consumer welfare. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes data verification and ethical considerations. This involves a thorough review of all supporting evidence, consultation with relevant departments, e.g., legal, R&D, and a commitment to making claims that are demonstrably true and not misleading. When in doubt, err on the side of caution and seek further clarification or revise the marketing message to be more conservative and accurate. Question 6. Assessment of potential risks for Keurig Dr. Pepper's upcoming fiscal year should primarily focus on identifying and prioritizing those that could have a material adverse effect on the company's financial statements and its ability to comply with U.S. securities laws, considering both the likelihood of occurrence and the potential magnitude of impact. Which of the following approaches best aligns with this principle for a publicly traded company? Option A. Comprehensive risk assessment that evaluates all potential risks across operational, financial, and compliance domains, prioritizing those with the highest potential impact on financial reporting and regulatory adherence, regardless of their initial perceived probability. Option B. A risk assessment that focuses only on risks with a very high probability of occurring, even if their potential financial impact is relatively minor. Option C. A risk assessment that exclusively targets operational disruptions and inefficiencies, as these directly impact day-to-day business activities and immediate profitability. Option D. A risk assessment that prioritizes risks based solely on their historical frequency of occurrence, assuming past patterns will accurately predict future events. Correct answer is A. A comprehensive risk assessment that evaluates all potential risks across operational, financial, and compliance domains, prioritizing those with the highest potential impact on financial reporting and regulatory adherence, regardless of their initial perceived probability. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Keurig Dr. Pepper, as a publicly traded company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight, particularly concerning financial reporting and risk management. The challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing risks that could materially impact the company's financial statements and operational integrity, requiring a nuanced understanding of both business operations and applicable regulations. Careful judgment is needed to distinguish between minor operational hiccups and significant risks that demand immediate attention and robust mitigation strategies. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of potential risks across all business functions, considering their likelihood and potential impact on Keurig Dr. Pepper's financial health and compliance status. This approach aligns with the principles of sound corporate governance and the requirements of regulatory bodies like the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in the United States, which mandate that public companies establish and maintain effective internal controls over financial reporting (ICFR). A thorough risk assessment ensures that management can proactively identify, evaluate, and address risks before they materialize into significant issues, thereby safeguarding shareholder value and maintaining regulatory compliance. This aligns with the spirit of regulations such as the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, which emphasizes the importance of robust risk assessment in the context of financial reporting. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate operational disruptions without considering their potential financial or regulatory implications fails to meet the comprehensive risk management standards expected of a public company. This oversight could lead to undetected material weaknesses in internal controls, potentially resulting in inaccurate financial reporting and regulatory sanctions. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only those risks with the highest probability of occurring, regardless of their potential impact, is also flawed. While probability is a factor, the magnitude of potential financial or reputational damage is equally critical in risk prioritization. Ignoring high-impact, lower probability events can leave Keurig Dr. Pepper vulnerable to catastrophic failures. A third incorrect approach that relies exclusively on historical data without considering emerging trends or future uncertainties is insufficient. The business environment is dynamic, and risks can evolve. Failing to incorporate forward-looking analysis means the company may not be adequately prepared for new or changing threats, such as shifts in consumer preferences, supply chain disruptions due to geopolitical events, or evolving cybersecurity threats. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This framework typically includes risk identification, risk analysis, assessing likelihood and impact, risk evaluation and prioritization, risk treatment mitigation, acceptance, transfer, or avoidance, and ongoing monitoring and review. Professionals should leverage a combination of internal expertise, external benchmarks, and regulatory guidance to ensure a comprehensive and effective risk assessment process that supports Keurig Dr Pepper's strategic objectives and compliance obligations. Question 7. Which approach would be most appropriate for a Keurig Dr Pepper hiring manager to ensure a fair and legally compliant evaluation of candidates for a new sales representative position? Option A. Prioritizing candidates who attended the same university as the hiring manager, believing this indicates a shared work ethic and understanding of the company culture. Option B. Relying on a gut feeling about a candidate's personality and potential to fit in with the existing team, even if their technical qualifications are less strong. Option C. Focusing on a candidate's social media presence to gauge their lifestyle and determine if it aligns with Keurig Dr Pepper's brand image. Option D. Conducting structured interviews with standardized questions and scoring based on predefined job-related competencies, while ensuring all candidates are assessed against the same criteria. Correct answer is D. Conducting structured interviews with standardized questions and scoring based on predefined job-related competencies, while ensuring all candidates are assessed against the same criteria. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's desire for efficient operations with the ethical and regulatory obligations to ensure fair and transparent hiring practices. A hiring manager at Keurig Dr Pepper must navigate potential biases and ensure all candidates are evaluated based on merit and qualifications, adhering to employment laws. Careful judgment is required to avoid any perception or reality of discriminatory practices. The correct approach involves a structured, objective evaluation process that focuses solely on job-related criteria. This aligns with best practices in human resources and regulatory frameworks designed to prevent discrimination. Specifically in the U.S., this approach adheres to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It also aligns with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission (EOC) guidelines, which emphasize the importance of job-relatedness and business necessity for any hiring criteria. By using standardized interview questions and objective scoring rubrics, Keurig Dr Pepper can demonstrate a commitment to fairness and compliance. An incorrect approach that relies on subjective impressions or personal connections would fail to meet regulatory standards. For instance, prioritizing candidates based on a gut feeling or personal rapport without objective justification opens the door to unconscious bias and potential discrimination claims. This violates the principle of equal opportunity and could lead to legal challenges under employment law. Another incorrect approach, such as focusing on superficial characteristics unrelated to job performance, like a candidate's alma mater if it's not a bona fide occupational qualification, also demonstrates a lack of adherence to fair hiring principles and could be seen as discriminatory. Furthermore, an approach that overlooks a candidate's qualifications due to a perceived lack of cultural fit, without a clear, job-related definition of that fit, risks introducing bias and failing to comply with anti-discrimination statutes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to objective assessment. This means defining clear, job-related criteria for each role, using standardized interview questions and evaluation tools, and training hiring managers on bias awareness and legal compliance. When faced with ambiguity, professionals should consult HR or legal counsel to ensure their decisions are defensible and ethical. Question 8. Implementation of a new marketing campaign for Keurig Dr Pepper products is underway, featuring prominent claims about the recyclability of its packaging and its commitment to reducing carbon emissions. The marketing team is eager to launch, but the Sustainability Department has raised concerns that some of the specific recyclability claims might be overly optimistic and that the carbon emission reduction data, while positive, could be misinterpreted by consumers as a complete solution rather than an ongoing effort. What is the most ethically and legally sound approach for Keurig Dr. Pepper to take? Option A. Delay the launch of the marketing campaign to conduct a thorough, independent review of all environmental claims, ensuring they are accurate, substantiated, and not misleading, and revise the messaging as necessary. Option B. Launch the campaign with the current messaging, but include a disclaimer in very small print that qualifies the environmental claims, hoping it will suffice legally. Option C. Remove all environmental claims from the marketing campaign to avoid any potential controversy or misinterpretation, even if it means losing a marketing opportunity. Option D. Proceed with the marketing campaign as planned, assuming consumers will understand the nuances of environmental reporting and that the general intent is positive. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the marketing campaign as planned, assuming consumers will understand the nuances of environmental reporting and that the general intent is positive. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's desire for positive public relations with the ethical obligation to be truthful and transparent in marketing. Keurig Dr. Pepper, as a publicly recognized brand, faces scrutiny regarding its environmental claims. Misrepresenting sustainability efforts, even unintentionally, can lead to significant reputational damage, consumer distrust, and potential regulatory action. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that marketing communications accurately reflect the company's actual environmental performance and commitments, avoiding any form of greenwashing. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based review of all environmental claims before they are disseminated. This means verifying that any statements about sustainability, recyclability, or reduced environmental impact are supported by concrete data and verifiable processes. This aligns with ethical marketing principles that prioritize honesty and accuracy, and it preempts potential violations of consumer protection laws that prohibit deceptive advertising. Specifically, in the U.S., Federal Trade Commission, FTC, Green Guides provide guidance on environmental marketing claims, emphasizing that such claims must be substantiated and not misleading. Adhering to these guidelines is crucial for maintaining consumer trust and avoiding legal repercussions. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the marketing campaign without independent verification of the environmental claims. This could involve relying solely on internal assessments that may not be objective or sufficiently rigorous. Such an approach risks making unsubstantiated claims, which is a direct violation of FTC guidelines and general principles of ethical advertising. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay or omit any information that might cast the company's environmental efforts in a less favorable light, even if the remaining claims are technically true. This selective disclosure can still be considered misleading by consumers and regulators, as it creates an incomplete and potentially deceptive impression. The failure here is in not providing a fair and balanced representation of the company's environmental performance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of all relevant marketing claims and their intended audience. This should be followed by a rigorous process of fact-checking and substantiation, ideally involving independent review where significant environmental claims are made. If there is any doubt about the accuracy or potential for misinterpretation of a claim, it should be revised or omitted until it can be fully substantiated. This proactive approach, grounded in ethical principles and regulatory compliance, is essential for responsible corporate communication. Question 9. Compliance review shows that Keurig Dr. Pepper is planning a new direct marketing campaign that involves collecting customer preferences through a digital survey. The marketing team proposes to use this data to personalize future promotions. However, the survey design does not explicitly detail how the collected preference data will be used for personalization, nor does it include a clear opt-in mechanism for this specific use. What is the most appropriate next step for Keurig Dr. Pepper to ensure compliance with consumer protection and data privacy regulations? Option A. Proceed with the campaign as planned, assuming that collecting preferences for personalized promotions is a standard marketing practice and implicitly covered by general terms of service. Option B. Implement the survey with a broad, non-specific privacy policy that mentions data usage for business purposes and rely on the assumption that customers understand their data will be used for marketing. Option C. Immediately halt all marketing activities related to this campaign and indefinitely postpone any data-driven personalization efforts until a comprehensive regulatory overhaul is completed. Option D. Consult with Keurig Dr. Pepper's legal and compliance departments to review the survey design, data usage, and consent mechanisms, and revise the campaign to ensure explicit clarity and obtain proper consent for personalized promotions. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the campaign as planned, assuming that collecting preferences for personalized promotions is a standard marketing practice and implicitly covered by general terms of service. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's operational needs with strict adherence to regulatory requirements, specifically concerning data privacy and consumer protection. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant regulations to a novel marketing initiative, demanding careful judgment to avoid potential legal repercussions and reputational damage. The correct approach involves proactively seeking clarification from the legal and compliance departments before proceeding with the marketing campaign. This demonstrates a commitment to regulatory adherence and ethical conduct. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation often found in consumer protection laws, ensuring that any data collected is necessary for the stated marketing purpose and is handled with appropriate consent and security. This proactive stance prevents potential violations by ensuring the campaign design itself is compliant. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the campaign based on an assumption of compliance without seeking expert guidance. This fails to acknowledge the complexity of data privacy regulations and the potential for misinterpretation, risks violating consumer privacy rights, leading to fines, legal action, and a loss of consumer trust. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the campaign with minimal data collection, but without understanding the specific consent mechanisms required by the regulations. While data minimization is a good principle, it does not absolve the company from obtaining proper consent for the data that is collected and used for marketing purposes. This could still lead to violations if the consent is not informed or freely given. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to delay the campaign indefinitely due to a fear of non-compliance without exploring viable compliant alternatives. While caution is important, an indefinite delay without seeking solutions can hinder business operations and innovation. The professional reasoning process should involve 1. Identifying the regulatory concern. 2. Consulting with internal legal and compliance experts to understand specific requirements. 3. Evaluating the proposed marketing initiative against these requirements. 4. Modifying the initiative to ensure compliance or exploring alternative compliance strategies. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale for the chosen approach. Question 10. During the evaluation of potential process optimizations for Keurig Dr. Pepper's beverage production lines, which of the following considerations should be given absolute priority to ensure compliance and responsible operations? Option A. Ensuring that all proposed process optimizations strictly adhere to current U.S. federal and state regulations concerning food safety, environmental impact, and labor practices, alongside efficiency goals. Option B. Focusing on innovations that improve the aesthetic appeal of the final product packaging to capture greater market share. Option C. Prioritizing modifications that enhance production speed and output volume, even if they require temporary deviations from established quality control protocols. Option D. Implementing changes that significantly reduce manufacturing costs by altering ingredient sourcing and production schedules. The correct answer is D. Implementing changes that significantly reduce manufacturing costs by altering ingredient sourcing and production schedules. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Keurig Dr. Pepper, like any large corporation, operates within a complex web of regulations and ethical considerations. When evaluating process optimization, it's crucial to balance efficiency gains with compliance and responsible business practices. The challenge lies in identifying improvements that are not only cost-effective, but also adhere to all applicable laws and ethical standards, particularly concerning consumer safety, environmental impact, and fair labor practices. A hasty or narrowly focused optimization could inadvertently lead to regulatory violations or reputational damage. The correct approach involves a holistic review that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical considerations alongside efficiency. This means thoroughly understanding all relevant laws and guidelines that govern Keurig Dr. Pepper's operations, such as those related to food safety, packaging, waste management, and supply chain transparency. By integrating these requirements into the optimization process from the outset, the company can ensure that proposed changes are sustainable and legally sound. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of future penalties, recalls, or public backlash, ultimately protecting the company's brand and long-term viability. An incorrect approach that overlooks regulatory frameworks would fail to identify potential legal pitfalls. For instance, optimizing packaging to reduce material costs without considering environmental regulations regarding recyclability or biodegradability could lead to non-compliance and fines. Similarly, streamlining production processes without ensuring continued adherence to food safety standards could jeopardize consumer health and result in severe legal repercussions and loss of consumer trust. Another incorrect approach might focus solely on cost reduction without assessing the ethical implications for employees or suppliers, potentially leading to labor disputes or supply chain disruptions that violate ethical sourcing guidelines or labor laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the regulatory landscape relevant to Keurig Dr. Pepper's business. This involves consulting legal and compliance departments, staying updated on industry-specific regulations, and conducting thorough risk assessments for any proposed process changes. The process should then involve cross-functional teams, including operations, legal, compliance, and sustainability, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Prioritizing solutions that demonstrably meet or exceed regulatory requirements while achieving operational efficiencies is paramount. Question 11. Stakeholder feedback indicates a potential misrepresentation of product sourcing information on Keurig Dr. Pepper's consumer-facing website. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the company's compliance department? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive, objective internal investigation into the accuracy of the product sourcing information, consulting relevant internal departments and external legal counsel as needed, and document all findings and actions. Option B. Issue a public statement acknowledging the feedback and promising a review, but defer any substantive investigation until after the current quarter's financial reporting is complete. Option C. Immediately remove all product sourcing information from the website to avoid further potential misrepresentation until a full review can be completed. Option D. Advise the marketing department to update the website with more generalized sourcing language to mitigate the risk of specific inaccuracies. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive, objective internal investigation into the accuracy of the product sourcing information, consulting relevant internal departments and external legal counsel as needed, and document all findings and actions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance stakeholder expectations with the company's ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. Keurig Dr. Pepper, as a publicly traded entity, operates under stringent regulations designed to ensure fair and transparent dealings with all stakeholders. Misinterpreting or disregarding stakeholder feedback, especially when it pertains to ethical conduct or potential regulatory breaches, can lead to significant reputational damage, legal repercussions, and erosion of investor confidence. Careful judgment is required to discern actionable feedback from mere opinion and to implement appropriate responses that align with both business objectives and legal frameworks. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective investigation into the stakeholders' concerns, followed by a transparent communication of findings and any corrective actions taken. This demonstrates a commitment to accountability and ethical governance, which are paramount in maintaining trust with all parties involved. Specifically, adhering to the principles of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, which governs the conduct of public companies and aims to prevent fraud and manipulation, is crucial. This includes ensuring that all communications are accurate and not misleading, and that any identified issues are addressed promptly and appropriately. An incorrect approach of dismissing the feedback without investigation fails to acknowledge the potential seriousness of the allegations and neglects the company's duty to act in good faith. This could be seen as a violation of the spirit, if not the letter, of regulations requiring due diligence and responsible corporate behavior. Another incorrect approach, that of immediately implementing drastic, unverified changes based solely on the feedback, could lead to operational disruptions, unnecessary costs, and potentially create new compliance issues if not carefully considered and aligned with existing regulations. Furthermore, a reactive approach without proper due diligence can be perceived as an admission of guilt or an attempt to placate stakeholders without addressing the root cause, which can undermine long-term credibility and invite further scrutiny. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the reported issue. This involves gathering all relevant information, assessing the potential risks and regulatory implications, and consulting with legal and compliance departments. The process should prioritize objectivity, fairness, and adherence to established company policies and regulatory requirements. Transparency and timely communication with relevant stakeholders, where appropriate and legally permissible, are also key components of responsible corporate conduct. Question 12. Performance analysis shows that a Keurig Dr. Pepper sales representative is consistently exceeding their quarterly targets by highlighting a new beverage, enhanced energy-boosting properties, to customers. However, internal product documentation and independent research suggest these properties are only marginally different from standard formulations and are not as significant as implied by the representative's sales pitch. The representative believes their approach is justified as it effectively drives sales and the product is not technically mislabeled. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Keurig Dr. Pepper sales manager to take in response to this performance analysis? Option A. Continue to praise the representative's sales achievements, as exceeding targets is the primary metric for success, and the product is not explicitly mislabeled according to the representative's interpretation. Option B. Advise the representative to continue their current sales strategy, as long as they do not make outright false claims, and suggest they focus on closing deals rather than getting bogged down in detailed product science. Option C. Instruct the representative to immediately cease all sales activities related to this product until a full investigation into the enhanced energy-boosting properties can be completed, regardless of current sales momentum. Option D. Acknowledge the representative's strong sales performance, but counsel them on the importance of ensuring their product descriptions are not misleading, emphasizing the need for accurate representation of product benefits to avoid potential consumer confusion and regulatory issues. The correct answer is D. Acknowledge the representative's strong sales performance, but counsel them on the importance of ensuring their product descriptions are not misleading, emphasizing the need for accurate representation of product benefits to avoid potential consumer confusion and regulatory issues. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Keurig Dr. Pepper employee due to the inherent conflict between achieving sales targets and adhering to ethical sales practices, particularly when dealing with potentially misleading product information. The pressure to meet performance metrics can incentivize shortcuts or misrepresentations, which can have significant legal and reputational consequences for both the individual and the company. Careful judgment is required to balance business objectives with regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. The correct approach involves a commitment to transparency and accuracy in all customer interactions. This means ensuring that all product information, including pricing, ingredients, and promotional details, is presented truthfully and without omission. When faced with a situation where a product's advertised benefits might be perceived as exaggerated or misleading, the ethical and legally sound action is to clarify the facts with the customer, providing accurate information and avoiding any statements that could be construed as deceptive. This aligns with general principles of fair dealing and consumer protection laws, which prohibit unfair or deceptive acts or practices in commerce. Specifically, in the U.S., the Federal Trade Commission (FTC) Act prohibits such practices. By prioritizing accurate communication, the employee upholds their responsibility to the customer and protects Keurig Dr. Pepper from potential regulatory scrutiny and damage to its brand reputation. An incorrect approach that involves downplaying or ignoring customer concerns about product claims, or actively misrepresenting the product's benefits to secure a sale, constitutes a failure to adhere to ethical sales standards and potentially violates consumer protection laws. Such actions can lead to customer complaints, regulatory investigations, and legal penalties. Another incorrect approach, which is to simply state that the product is as advertised without further clarification or addressing the customer's specific concerns, fails to demonstrate good faith and can still leave the customer with a misleading impression, thereby risking a violation of fair dealing principles. Finally, an approach that prioritizes the sale above all else, even at the expense of truthfulness, demonstrates a severe lapse in professional judgment and ethical responsibility, exposing the company to significant risks. Professionals in sales roles should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the customer's needs and concerns. This should be followed by a commitment to providing accurate and complete information, even if it means a sale is not immediately made. If a situation arises where product claims are questioned, the professional should seek to clarify the facts, consult internal resources or supervisors if necessary, and always err on the side of transparency. This proactive and honest approach builds trust and ensures compliance with legal and ethical obligations. Question 13. Quality control measures reveal a potential anomaly in the sealing mechanism of a specific batch of Keurig Dr. Pepper bottled beverages, raising concerns about potential leakage and spoilage. What is the most appropriate initial risk assessment approach for Keurig Dr. Pepper to undertake? Option A. Immediately initiate a voluntary recall of the affected batch to prevent any potential consumer exposure, while simultaneously engaging regulatory affairs to determine reporting obligations. Option B. Issue a public statement acknowledging a potential issue and advising consumers to return any purchased products from the affected batch to their point of sale. Option C. Focus on identifying the root cause of the sealing anomaly and implementing corrective actions in the manufacturing process before considering any external communication or reporting. Option D. Conduct a thorough internal investigation to quantify the extent of the anomaly, assess the potential risk to consumers, and consult with legal and regulatory counsel to determine the appropriate reporting and corrective action strategy. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a voluntary recall of the affected batch to prevent any potential consumer exposure, while simultaneously engaging regulatory affairs to determine reporting obligations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need to address a potential product defect with the company's obligation to maintain accurate and timely reporting to regulatory bodies. A hasty or incomplete response could lead to regulatory noncompliance, damage to Keurig Dr. Pepper's reputation, and potential harm to consumers. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all necessary steps are taken in a compliant and ethical manner. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment that prioritizes consumer safety and regulatory compliance. This means immediately initiating an internal investigation to understand the scope and severity of the potential defect, while simultaneously preparing for potential disclosure to relevant authorities. This proactive stance demonstrates Keurig Dr. Pepper's commitment to transparency and its adherence to regulations that mandate reporting of product safety issues. An incorrect approach would be to delay or withhold information from regulatory bodies. This failure to report could violate regulations requiring prompt notification of potential hazards, leading to significant penalties and loss of trust. Another incorrect approach would be to issue a broad recall without a proper assessment of the risk, which could be unnecessarily disruptive and costly, and might also indicate a lack of understanding of risk management principles. Finally, focusing solely on internal cost containment without considering the broader implications for consumer safety and regulatory standing is also professionally unsound. Professionals should approach such situations by first activating their internal incident response protocols. This typically involves forming a cross-functional team, including quality assurance, legal, regulatory affairs, and communications, to conduct a rapid and comprehensive risk assessment. The team should gather all available data, consult relevant regulations, e.g., FDA regulations for food and beverage products in the U.S., and determine the appropriate course of action, which may include further testing, containment, corrective actions, and regulatory notification. The decision-making process should be guided by a hierarchy of priorities: consumer safety, regulatory compliance, and then business impact. Question 14. The performance metrics show a significant opportunity for cost savings in Keurig Dr. Pepper's beverage production lines. When considering process optimization to achieve these savings, What is the most critical factor to evaluate to ensure compliance with U.S. food safety regulations? Option A. The implementation of new packaging designs that reduce material usage without assessing their effect on product integrity. Option B. The adoption of process efficiencies commonly used in the electronics manufacturing industry to streamline operations. Option C. The immediate reduction in raw material sourcing costs, regardless of the impact on processing steps. Option D. The potential impact of proposed changes on the product's shelf life and consumer safety, verified against FDA guidelines and good manufacturing practices. The correct answer is D. The potential impact of proposed changes on the product's shelf life and consumer safety, verified against FDA guidelines and good manufacturing practices. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Keurig Dr. Pepper employees involved in process optimization. The core difficulty lies in balancing the drive for efficiency and cost reduction with the imperative to maintain product quality and adhere to regulatory standards. Misinterpreting or neglecting these standards can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and harm to consumers. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process improvements do not inadvertently compromise safety or compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of current Keurig Dr. Pepper operational procedures against relevant U.S. federal and state food safety regulations, such as those enforced by the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and potentially state-specific agencies. This includes understanding good manufacturing practices, GMP, and hazard analysis and critical control points, HAC, principles, by systematically identifying potential risks and ensuring that any proposed process changes do not create new hazards or compromise existing controls. The company upholds its legal and ethical obligations. This proactive and compliant approach safeguards consumer health and maintains the integrity of Keurig Dr. Pepper's products and brand. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This approach risks introducing unsafe practices or compromising product integrity to achieve financial goals, violating FDA regulations, and potentially leading to recalls or legal action. Implementing changes based on anecdotal evidence or industry best practices from unrelated sectors without verifying their applicability and compliance within the stringent U.S. food and beverage regulatory framework is also problematic. This can lead to unintended consequences that violate specific regulations, such as those pertaining to ingredient sourcing, processing temperatures, or packaging integrity. Ignoring potential downstream effects on product shelf life or consumer safety due to process modifications, even if seemingly minor, represents a failure to conduct a complete risk assessment. This oversight can lead to products that degrade prematurely or pose unforeseen health risks, contravening the fundamental principles of food safety mandated by U.S. law. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Keurig Dr. Pepper should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and consumer safety above all else when undertaking process optimization. This involves 1. Identifying all applicable U.S. federal and state regulations relevant to the specific processes being optimized. 2. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment for any proposed changes, considering potential impacts on product safety, quality, and regulatory adherence. 3. Consulting with legal and quality assurance departments to validate that proposed changes meet all compliance requirements. 4. Documenting all assessments and decisions thoroughly. 5. Implementing changes only after obtaining necessary approvals and ensuring adequate training for personnel. Question 15. The evaluation methodology shows that a key supplier to Keurig Dr. Pepper has offered a senior procurement manager a weekend luxury golf trip, including travel and accommodation, to attend a prestigious tournament. The manager is currently involved in contract renewal negotiations with this supplier. Which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to ethical business practices and regulatory compliance for a Keurig Dr. Pepper employee? Option A. Accept the golf trip but disclose it to the supplier's contact person and inform them that it will not influence the negotiation outcome. Option B. Accept the golf trip and inform Keurig Dr. Pepper's legal department after the negotiations have concluded. Option C. Accept the golf trip, viewing it as a standard business relationship building activity, and proceed with the contract negotiations. Option D. Politely decline the offer, citing company policy on gifts and entertainment, and continue with the contract negotiations based solely on business merits. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the offer, citing company policy on gifts and entertainment, and continue with the contract negotiations based solely on business merits. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Keurig Dr. Pepper employee because it requires navigating potential conflicts of interest and ensuring compliance with internal policies and external regulations regarding the acceptance of gifts and entertainment from suppliers. The core difficulty lies in distinguishing between permissible business courtesies and inducements that could compromise objective decision-making or violate ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to uphold Keurig Dr. Pepper's reputation and maintain fair business practices. The correct approach involves a thorough review of Keurig Dr. Pepper's established gift and entertainment policy. This policy, aligned with relevant U.S. federal and state regulations concerning business ethics and anti-bribery, likely outlines specific thresholds for gift values, types of acceptable entertainment, and reporting requirements. By adhering to these guidelines, an employee demonstrates integrity and ensures that business decisions are based on merit rather than personal gain. This approach prioritizes transparency and accountability, safeguarding both the individual and the company from ethical breaches and potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves accepting a high-value gift without considering the company policy or its implications for future dealings with the supplier is professionally unacceptable. This failure to consult internal guidelines can lead to a violation of Keurig Dr. Pepper's Code of Conduct and potentially contravene U.S. anti-corruption laws, which prohibit offering or accepting anything of value to influence business decisions. Another incorrect approach, accepting entertainment that appears to be a direct quid pro quo for a favorable business decision, is also professionally unsound. This behavior creates a clear conflict of interest and can be construed as a bribe, exposing the employee and Keurig Dr. Pepper to significant legal and reputational damage. Such actions undermine the principles of fair competition and ethical business conduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a proactive understanding of Keurig Dr. Pepper's policies on gifts, entertainment, and conflicts of interest. When faced with an offer, the employee should immediately assess it against these policies. If there is any ambiguity or if the offer exceeds established limits, the employee should err on the side of caution and seek guidance from their manager or the company's compliance department before accepting. This systematic approach ensures that all actions are transparent, ethical, and compliant with regulatory requirements. Question 16. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some consumers are concerned about the accuracy of marketing claims made by Keurig Dr. Pepper regarding the health benefits and ingredient transparency of certain beverage products. As a compliance officer, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Issue a company-wide directive to all marketing teams to avoid making any specific health claims until further notice. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of all marketing materials and public statements related to the product categories in question, cross-referencing ingredient lists and health claims with current scientific literature and regulatory guidelines. Option C. Advise the Public Relations Department to prepare a general statement acknowledging consumer feedback without delving into specific product details. Option D. Instruct the legal department to draft a response to the stakeholders emphasizing the company's commitment to consumer satisfaction, without addressing the specific concerns about ingredient transparency. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive review of all marketing materials and public statements related to the product categories in question, cross-referencing ingredient lists and health claims with current scientific literature and regulatory guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's desire for positive public perception with the ethical and regulatory obligation to provide accurate and transparent information, especially concerning product ingredients and potential health impacts. Misrepresenting product information, even with good intentions to avoid negative publicity, can lead to serious regulatory violations and erode consumer trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure all communications are truthful, substantiated, and compliant with relevant advertising and consumer protection laws. The correct approach involves proactively addressing the stakeholder feedback by reviewing and verifying the accuracy of all public statements and marketing materials related to the product's ingredients and health claims. This includes consulting internal scientific and regulatory affairs teams to ensure all information aligns with current scientific understanding and regulatory requirements. This approach is correct because it prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and compliance with consumer protection laws, such as those enforced by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, regarding truthful advertising and labeling. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical business practices and builds long-term consumer confidence. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the feedback without investigation, assuming it is unfounded or an isolated incident. It fails to acknowledge potential issues and neglects the company's responsibility to address consumer concerns, potentially leading to a failure to identify and rectify any inaccuracies in product information. This could violate regulations requiring truthful and non-misleading advertising. Another incorrect approach would be to issue a generic, non-committal statement that avoids directly addressing the specific concerns raised about ingredients and health impacts. This approach lacks transparency and may be perceived as evasive, failing to build trust with stakeholders and potentially violating regulations that require clear and accurate product information. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to alter marketing materials to downplay or omit information that might be perceived negatively, without a scientific or regulatory basis for doing so. This constitutes misleading advertising and is a direct violation of consumer protection laws, as it prioritizes marketing spin over factual representation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging and thoroughly investigating all stakeholder feedback. This involves gathering relevant data, consulting with internal experts, legal, regulatory, scientific, and assessing potential risks and compliance issues. The subsequent action should be based on factual findings and a commitment to regulatory adherence and ethical communication. Question 17. The efficiency study reveals potential discrepancies in Keurig Dr. Pepper's waste disposal reporting that could indicate non-compliance with environmental regulations. A senior manager suggests immediately adjusting future reports to align with the study's projected savings, arguing that minor variances are common and the focus should be on operational efficiency. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for Keurig Dr. Pepper to take in this situation? Option A. Instruct the team responsible for waste disposal reporting to review the study and make minor internal adjustments to align with the projected savings, without external verification. Option B. Conduct a thorough, independent audit of waste disposal records and practices to verify the study's findings and ensure full compliance with all applicable environmental regulations before making any adjustments. Option C. Ignore the discrepancies identified in the efficiency study, assuming they are minor errors, and continue with current reporting practices to avoid disrupting operational efficiency. Option D. Immediately implement the cost-saving adjustments suggested by the efficiency study to improve operational efficiency and address the projected variances in waste disposal reporting. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough, independent audit of waste disposal records and practices to verify the study's findings and ensure full compliance with all applicable environmental regulations before making any adjustments. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's pursuit of efficiency with ethical considerations and adherence to regulatory guidelines. The pressure to meet performance targets can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential ethical breaches. Careful judgment is required to ensure that cost-saving measures do not compromise the integrity of Keurig Dr. Pepper's operations or its commitment to responsible business practices. The correct approach involves a thorough and transparent investigation into the identified discrepancies, prioritizing factual accuracy and compliance with relevant regulations. This approach is right because it upholds the principles of accountability and integrity. By directly addressing the findings of the efficiency study and initiating a formal review, Keurig Dr. Pepper demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This proactive stance helps to identify and rectify any potential issues, thereby protecting the company's reputation and ensuring adherence to established standards. An incorrect approach of immediately implementing cost-cutting measures based on the preliminary findings without further investigation is professionally unacceptable. This would be a failure to exercise due diligence and could lead to the perpetuation or exacerbation of any underlying ethical or regulatory violations. It bypasses the necessary steps to verify the accuracy of the study and understand the root causes of the discrepancies, potentially leading to decisions that are not only unethical but also detrimental to the company in the long run. Another incorrect approach of dismissing the findings as minor or inconsequential, especially if they hint at potential regulatory noncompliance, is also professionally unsound. This demonstrates a disregard for established protocols and a lack of commitment to ethical operations. Such an attitude can foster a culture where ethical lapses are tolerated, increasing the risk of significant legal and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, acknowledge and document all findings from any study or report. Second, assess the potential implications of these findings, considering both operational efficiency and ethical/regulatory compliance. Third, initiate a formal review process involving relevant stakeholders and subject matter experts to thoroughly investigate the discrepancies. Fourth, based on verified facts, develop and implement corrective actions that align with ethical principles and regulatory requirements. Finally, monitor the effectiveness of these actions and ensure ongoing compliance. Question 18. Investigation of potential risks associated with a new beverage product launch by Keurig Dr. Pepper requires a comprehensive approach. Which of the following best describes the most appropriate risk assessment methodology to ensure compliance with U.S. regulatory frameworks and ethical business practices? Option A. Prioritizing market demand and potential revenue projections while conducting only superficial checks for regulatory compliance. Option B. Focusing primarily on competitor product analysis to identify market gaps, with regulatory compliance being a secondary consideration addressed only if significant issues arise. Option C. Conducting a thorough risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential hazards across product safety, supply chain, marketing, and environmental impact, ensuring alignment with FDA and FTC guidelines. Option D. Relying on anecdotal feedback from internal teams regarding product safety and marketing claims, without formal documentation or adherence to established regulatory standards. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing market demand and potential revenue projections while conducting only superficial checks for regulatory compliance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Keurig Dr. Pepper employee tasked with assessing potential risks associated with a new product launch. The challenge lies in balancing the need for innovation and market competitiveness with the imperative to comply with all applicable regulations and ethical standards. A thorough risk assessment requires not only identifying potential hazards, but also evaluating their likelihood and impact, and then developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This process is crucial for protecting consumers, the company's reputation, and its financial stability. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of all potential risks, considering both internal and external factors. This includes reviewing product safety data, supply chain integrity, marketing claims, and potential environmental impacts. Crucially, it requires adherence to the specific regulatory framework governing food and beverage products in the United States, such as those enforced by the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. This approach ensures that all foreseeable risks are identified, assessed, and managed in accordance with legal and ethical obligations, thereby safeguarding consumers and the company. An incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the potential market success of the new product without adequately considering regulatory compliance. For instance, rushing a product to market without thorough safety testing or accurate labeling would violate FDA regulations regarding food safety and misbranding. Similarly, making unsubstantiated marketing claims about the product's health benefits would contravene FTC guidelines on advertising and deceptive practices. Another failure would be to overlook potential environmental risks, such as unsustainable sourcing of ingredients or excessive packaging waste, which could lead to reputational damage and potential future regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the scope of the assessment and identifying all relevant stakeholders. This is followed by a thorough risk identification phase, where potential issues are brainstormed and documented. Next, each identified risk should be analyzed for its likelihood and potential impact, using a defined matrix or scoring system. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and prioritized. Finally, a robust monitoring and review process must be established to ensure that risks remain managed effectively throughout the product lifecycle. This systematic approach, grounded in regulatory compliance and ethical considerations, is essential for responsible product development and launch at a company like Keurig Dr. Pepper. Question 19. The performance metrics show a significant shortfall in projected sales for a new Keurig Dr. Pepper beverage line in a key regional market. Your sales team is under pressure to close the gap before the end of the quarter. One of your top performers suggests that to boost sales, they could highlight the perceived health benefits of the new beverage more aggressively, even if those benefits are not fully substantiated by independent research, and offer a limited-time discount that requires a longer-term subscription commitment without clearly emphasizing the subscription aspect upfront. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Instruct the sales team to focus on accurate product information and transparently communicate all terms and conditions, including subscription details, while exploring alternative ethical sales strategies to meet targets. Option B. Encourage the sales team to focus on aggressive closing tactics and to downplay any potential downsides of the product or subscription to meet the sales targets. Option C. Advise the sales team to highlight the perceived health benefits and offer the discount, assuming that customers will understand the subscription requirement through context. Option D. Authorize the sales representative to emphasize the potential health benefits as described in marketing materials, and to present the discount as a standard promotional offer, with subscription details provided later in the process. The correct answer is A. Instruct the sales team to focus on accurate product information and transparently communicate all terms and conditions, including subscription details, while exploring alternative, ethical sales strategies to meet targets. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's pursuit of market share with adherence to ethical sales practices and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet aggressive sales targets can tempt individuals to engage in misleading or aggressive tactics, which can have severe consequences for both the company and consumers. Careful judgment is required to ensure that sales efforts are conducted with integrity and within legal boundaries. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of Keurig Dr. Pepper's internal sales policies, which are designed to align with relevant consumer protection laws and ethical marketing standards. This approach prioritizes accurate product representation and fair dealing with customers, ensuring that sales representatives provide complete and truthful information about product features, pricing, and any associated terms or conditions. This aligns with the ethical imperative to treat customers fairly and avoid deceptive practices, which is a cornerstone of responsible business conduct and is often reinforced by regulatory bodies overseeing consumer markets. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on meeting aggressive sales targets without regard for the accuracy of information provided to customers is ethically flawed and legally risky. This could lead to misrepresentation of product benefits or pricing, potentially violating consumer protection laws that prohibit deceptive advertising and unfair sales practices. Another incorrect approach that involves pressuring customers into immediate purchases without allowing them adequate time to consider their options or fully understand the terms of sale can be considered coercive and unethical. This disregards the customer's right to make informed decisions and can lead to dissatisfaction and complaints, potentially triggering regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach that involves withholding crucial information about product limitations or contractual obligations to secure a sale is a direct violation of ethical principles and consumer protection regulations, as it constitutes a failure to disclose material facts. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of company policies and applicable regulations. When faced with pressure to achieve targets, they should critically evaluate their sales tactics to ensure they are both effective and ethical. This involves prioritizing transparency, honesty, and fairness in all customer interactions. If a sales target appears unattainable through ethical means, the professional should escalate concerns to management, seeking guidance on realistic expectations or alternative strategies, rather than resorting to questionable practices. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that the online platform used by Keurig Dr. Pepper for candidate evaluations collects a broad range of personal information, including browsing history and device identifiers, in addition to standard application data. A candidate has expressed concern about the extent of data collection and has requested information on how this data aligns with their privacy rights under U.S. federal and state laws. Which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to regulatory compliance and ethical data handling practices for Keurig Dr. Pepper? Option A. Collect additional data beyond what is strictly necessary for the assessment, arguing that a more comprehensive data set will lead to a better hiring decision for Keurig Dr. Pepper, and inform the candidate that this is a necessary part of their evaluation process. Option B. Proceed with the assessment as planned, assuming that standard employment application data is not subject to strict privacy regulations like the CCPA, and only address the candidate's concerns if a formal complaint is filed. Option C. Immediately cease collection of all non-essential data and provide the candidate with a clear, concise notice detailing the types of personal information collected, the specific business purposes for its collection and use by Keurig Dr. Pepper, and instructions on how the candidate can exercise their rights under applicable U.S. privacy laws, such as the CCPA. Option D. Inform the candidate that the data collection is standard for hiring assessments and that all collected information is necessary for evaluating their suitability for the role at Keurig Dr. Pepper, without further explanation of specific rights or data types. The correct answer is C. Immediately cease collection of all non-essential data and provide the candidate with a clear, concise notice detailing the types of personal information collected, the specific business purposes for its collection and use by Keurig Dr. Pepper, and instructions on how the candidate can exercise their rights under applicable U.S. privacy laws, such as the CCPA. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts between company policy and regulatory requirements, specifically concerning data privacy and consumer protection within the context of a hiring assessment. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the assessment process, while designed to evaluate candidates for Keurig Dr. Pepper, adheres strictly to applicable U.S. federal and state privacy laws. A hasty or uninformed decision could lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and a breach of trust with potential employees. The correct approach involves prioritizing compliance with the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, and any other relevant U.S. privacy regulations. This means understanding what constitutes personal information under these laws, obtaining proper consent for data collection and processing, and ensuring that candidates are informed about their rights regarding their data. Specifically, this involves providing clear notice about the types of data collected, the purpose of collection, and how it will be used and stored by Keurig Dr. Pepper. It also entails respecting candidates' rights to access, delete, or opt out of the sale of their personal information, as mandated by the CCPA. This approach is ethically sound and legally defensible, demonstrating Keurig Dr. Pepper's commitment to responsible data handling and candidate privacy. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with data collection without explicitly informing candidates about the CCPA provisions or obtaining their affirmative consent for the specific data being gathered for the hiring assessment. This failure to provide adequate notice and obtain consent directly violates the CCPA requirements for transparency and individual rights. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that general employment application data is exempt from CCPA protections without verifying this with legal counsel or understanding the specific nuances of the law as it applies to pre-employment screening. This oversight could lead to noncompliance. Finally, disregarding candidate requests for data access or deletion, even if perceived as inconvenient, would be a clear violation of their CCPA rights and a significant ethical and legal misstep. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all applicable regulations. This involves consulting with legal and compliance departments to understand the specific requirements of laws like the CCPA. Next, they should assess the assessment process against these regulations, identifying any potential gaps or areas of noncompliance. The process should then involve developing and implementing policies and procedures that ensure full adherence, including clear communication with candidates about data practices and the establishment of mechanisms to honor candidate rights. Continuous review and updates to these practices are essential to maintain compliance in an evolving regulatory landscape.